better faces Corey. But man, Yuta has just been playing this deck so well, and every turn he just plays so efficiently and stuff. It doesn't matter if it's the first turn or if it's the 15th turn. You know, Yuta is just going to make the correct play. It's been impressive to watch.
Yeah, Izzet Phoenix has been certainly a powerful deck to contend with, especially with the introduction of Brainstorm and Faithless Looting being such pivotal cards in making the Rise of the Phoenix happen once again. So we're going to kick things off here with the itty-bitty little Phoenix, kind of an itty-bitty Phoenix, and the Sprite Dragon chipping in there for 1 point of damage to get this game underway.
Yeah, nice little start here from Yuta. We got a little bit of counter magic here for, let's say, that turn 3 Narset if Corey were to go for it, as well as Brainstorm to manipulate your library a little bit. We even got the Fabled Passage to shuffle some stuff you don't want away. And then the old Crackles up top to try to push through those damage. But yeah, that Inquisition is going to probably take that Dispute. Seems like a very dangerous card here. But of course, Brainstorm is the other inclusion and another very powerful spell.
Yeah, typically what you've seen the Brainstorm decks do is hold up the 1 blue mana to shuffle or to put away the most important cards in the hand so that the hand disruption spells aren't as good as they could be. But, you know, Yuta Takahashi valuing getting this creature down on the battlefield and chipping away at this life total as quickly as possible.
Yeah, absolutely. And valuing taking Brainstorm out of the hand. You know, you think, man, this Narset is so important. This Teferi is so important. I want to get rid of it. But it just shows, you know, the legacy staple of Brainstorm, believe it or not, is pretty good in Historic, too.
Yeah, it turns out it's not too bad of a Magic card. But, you know, I think from the control player's perspective, knowing that there's a counter spell makes it a lot easier to play around. Whereas the Brainstorm represents unknown quantities. You have no idea what's getting put back and what's being drawn. So just keeping as much information available to him as possible is the reason that Corey took the Brainstorm.
Very good point. Yeah, especially because we see all those eyeballs on the 4 cards on the left there. When you Brainstorm, those eyeballs go away because you could have put back any of them, you know? So it doesn't allow you to have any more information. So when you're playing a control deck, especially when you're as good of a control player as Corey Burkhart is, you really want as much information to value your plays and to make sure you play around stuff. So yeah, well said, Ailey.
So no shocked in Steam Vents here, no hard cost, Arclight Phoenix. Yuta Takahashi is going to keep up that Mystical Dispute and try and counter whatever's coming next. Sensor is going to get cycled away, finds a Brainstorm here for Corey Burkhart. So a couple of Brainstorms and the Fabled Passage to shuffle away. Not a bad spot to be in for him.
Yeah, not bad. And look at the difference between having this known information and not having the known information. Sprite Dragon didn't attack even though the coast was clear, but there's 4 Shark Typhoon in Corey's deck, and you never know. It's a train wreck if your 1/1 trades with your Sprite Dragon right here. So good defensive play from Yuta, even though it wasn't there.
Yeah, now here's an interesting decision. What to put back here for Corey Burkhart?
Yeah, that's interesting. And it's one of those things where, like, you know, Corey knows he's going to draw one of these cards. And that second one below, maybe we want to shuffle one of those cards away with Fabled Passage. Or if maybe these cards are just so good, Corey is just going to play the Hallowed Fountain and draw that other Brainstorm. I wouldn't be too shocked to just keep both Brainstorms. They represent just so much advantage later in the game, even if it's not needed right now.
Yeah, for sure. He's going to kick things off, though, with a Hallowed Fountain untapped. Thoughtseize is going to take a look in the hand to see what that last unknown card is and get rid of one of these threats in hand here for Yuta Takahashi. It's going to be the Mystical Dispute that gets taken care of. So now he knows that it's just a bunch of birdies. And you know what goes well with birdies or not in Yuta Takahashi's case? A good old Wrath of God.
Exactly. And I'm wondering, okay, I was very curious if Corey was going to just not activate that at all, because you do have that option to just keep it at 5. And then even if you play Arclight Phoenix and attack it for 4 and then Wrath, you know, it at least controls the battlefield and it keeps that static around. But Corey valuing that extra card a little bit more, even though he was going to draw Brainstorm.
And Narset's also an excellent way to shuffle up at least the top of the library. You know, if you've put a couple of unsavory cards on top from a bad Brainstorm, then those cards go away. And now the second or third Brainstorm now is going to take a look at even more gas. Look at that. Shark Typhoon, Dovin's Veto, Fatal Push. Those are all disgusting cards.
Yeah, no kidding. The world is Corey's oyster right now. It's just, can you play around these creatures? You got to stem the bleeding from the creatures on the battlefield. Does that open up the opportunity for Yuta to play Crackling Drake and draw some cards? It's all about just careful maneuvering. And like you said earlier, Corey Burkhart, usually the Grixis master, Grixis control, but doesn't do so bad adding white instead of red. He is a master of his craft.
I mean, if you're playing Historic, why wouldn't you want to play Teferi, Hero of Dominaria?
Yes, I mean, yeah, Teferi is unbelievable. One of the best standard cards, in its time. And of course, it naturally slots into Historic and makes an impact.
Sure. So, deciding here what's going to be sent back. Looks like Narset and Brainstorm will be sent back to the top of the library. Dovin's Veto doesn't have any targets at this moment, but we'll find one a little later on, no doubt. Can also protect against any counter magic that Yuta Takahashi would have for something like a Teferi. But for now, we're quite happy to clear the board. Wrath of God takes care of the two creatures. So into the bin, the Phoenix goes, hopefully to return at a later stage.
The one thing that, is not 100% ideal for Corey here, he wishes he could have saved that Fabled Passage to be able to crack it and then kill Crackling Drake for 1 mana with Fatal Push. Not the biggest deal, because we can either draw another effect like Fabled Passage, or we can kind of backdoor our way in where you cycle a Shark Typhoon, block with a 1/1, and then Revolt is triggered, and then you can Fatal Push Crackling Drake. So not the biggest deal, but definitely something Corey is going to keep in mind, and I think we all should as well.
Yeah. Fatal Push, like you mentioned, one of the all-stars in terms of removal. Just so versatile, especially with the ability to make something leave your battlefield to trigger that Revolt and get rid of bigger creatures. I mean, 1 mana kill a 4/4 seems pretty good.
Not bad at all. Yeah. And, unfortunately for all Fatal Push fans, when Uro left, that was a really good card that left the battlefield and allowed you to Fatal Push. So not as good of options now, but yeah, still very strong effects. One thing I want to point out is Yuta's draw has not been very good. He's just not drawing any spells. With a deck almost completely, put together with spells, he just hasn't drawn really any meaningful ones in the last few turns.
He hasn't. He's found Brazen Borrower. If he did try to, I don't know, bounce something, I don't know if he'd go for the bounce here as opposed to just swinging in for an attack. Teferi wouldn't die, though. There's a Fatal Push and a Dovin's Veto, so it looks like he's going to go. Yeah, is he? No, just going to retap the mana there.
Yeah, it's interesting because if Yuta starts with a Petty Theft on Teferi, you're pretty tempted to counter that, but that means any spell, and Yuta could just attack down Teferi for lethal. We know there's only one spell, which makes it a little risky, but Corey doesn't know that.
Yeah, and depending on what Yuta did there would be an option too of just letting Teferi be bounced, and then Fatal Push can take care of the Crackling Drake.
Yeah, very good point. That would have been an excellent play there that Corey would have probably been pretty happy to do.
So for the time being, just the swing in there for 3 against Teferi. He goes down to 2. Brazen Borrower is going to be held on to and may just be worthwhile hanging on to as just an attacker. Or a Shark Typhoon token bouncer.
Or, of course, the fan favorite, we could get a hard cast next turn. That's the dream. That is definitely the dream.
Who do you think this is, Gab Nassif?
Exactly. I don't know if I've ever seen Corey Burkhart hard cast a shark in his entire life. So
stranger things have happened.
Exactly.
Today could be the day, and there's another Shark Typhoon. So why not? Give us what we want, Corey, and then you can do whatever you like with the other one.
Exactly. Increases the probability there if we get another one of those.
Yeah. I mean, if you think about it, Shark Typhoon and Teferi are best friends because you can hardcast Shark Typhoon, do the plus on Teferi, untap the 2 lands, cast a spell, get a shark counter thing, you win.
Yeah,
right?
and I'm looking at Yuta's list. If we have anything, we have some disputes here in the main deck, so you really got to be afraid of that. That's kind of the nightmare scenario. And that is one of the cards that could truly be in Yuta's hand. He hasn't been casting anything. It really, if I was playing against him right now, the only things I would think is in Yuta's hand is lands, mystical disputes, maybe lightning axe, since I haven't cast a creature. Nothing else would make sense. So it makes sense to not cycle a shark there. It's just a little too risky.
Yeah. On the upkeep here, looks like we're going to go for Baleful Mastery. Will we pay the student cost or the full price? Fun fact, the cheaper cost is called student cost.
I did not know that.
Yeah, it shows in Arena. I don't know if it shows anywhere else, though.
Huh, okay. All right. I'm learning more every single commentating job with you.
Yeah, very flavorful considering Strixhaven and whatnot.
But, I like it.
Teferi is going to take another punch to the gut, and we're going to see a follow-up here of Storming Entity off the top. So a couple of decent draws back-to-back here for Yuta, but still quite a ways to go when you compare his hand to Corey Burkhart's.
Yeah, exactly. Yuta's just been playing full retail bird aggro at this point. Hasn't really drawn a spell, and is just hard casting these Arclight Phoenixes, these Stormwing Entities, the good old hard way here. But that is another option with the deck. It makes it really versatile.
Oh, big shark time. Here is the opportunity to bounce the shark token. As the guard is down here for Corey Burkhart. No mana up for Dovin's Veto, so won't get the big old shark, unfortunately.
Yep, and one reason especially to do it, we saw this happen in the Seth Manfield matchup earlier, is he got Dwari Disruption that really late in the game. There's sensors as well in Corey Burkhart's list. You never want to run into that pay one effect or be countered this late in the game. It feels bad.
It does indeed. So a couple of lands there off the top here for Corey. Certainly no shortage of that.
I think it's time. It's
are we doing
time. This is
are we doing
perfect
it?
situation. Let's go.
Oh, yeah. That's what we like to see. Oh, that's going to be a 4/4 shark if we fire off that Baleful Mastery for the full cost.
Exactly. And Baleful Mastery here is probably the most ideal card. Being able to kill Storming Entity and block Crackling Drake, and not even just like trade with Crackling Drake. At this point, if there's not any other spells, Crackling Drake is just going to get eaten by this 4/4 shark.
Yep. Shark attack. Do. Here it comes. So Baleful will get rid of the Storming Entity. There's the big 4/4. That'll jump in the way of the Crackling Drake. And things are looking quite dire here for Yuta. Did, in fact, pay the cheaper cost there, leaving up that Dovin's Veto too. So a very, very good turn there for Corey Burkhart.
Yeah, in hindsight, it didn't work out as well as just hard casting it, but Corey doesn't know that. The Ox is something that can be cast at least, and not Dovin's Vetoed. You know, so that is pretty valuable. And we've just seen Ox from Yuta just look great. You know, this last match, it was unbelievable against Austin Bursavage. And, you know, it was kind of the difference in the match, and looking great here as well.
Yep. And he can still do even more this turn if he wants to. Firing off an Opt. Doesn't look like, oh, hello. Doesn't look like we're going to go for the Dovin's Veto on that, but finds a Fry. So we'll be able to take care of the Teferi, as Fry is, of course, uncounterable.
And I want to point this out to anybody who is kind of screaming at their monitor that's saying, like, no, Fry first, Fry first. We've been seeing Yuta do this the whole time, and it's such a great play. You escape this, and then either with the trigger on the stack, or you hold priority, go into full control like we see Yuta. And then you can Fry. So let's say there were mystical disputes, something like that. Now instead, you get to resolve the Ox and get your Fry as well. Kind of your cake and eat it too.
Nice. Ox flavored cake. No, wait, that sounds disgusting. Never mind.
That'd be an interesting delicacy, I would say.
Yeah. So Fry instead is going to take care of this big old shark, it looks like.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. All right. All right.
With Teferi. Interesting.
Yeah, Teferi won't be able to minus the Ox away at the moment. So perhaps feeling pretty confident that Yuta will be able to take care of that pesky Planeswalker.
Yeah, and we gotta look at that Baleful Mastery so far, and while it looked pretty awesome to play for 2 because you have the Dovin's Veto to back it up, an uncounterable card and then a creature that draws you 3 cards has really kind of bitten Corey a little bit here, and it hasn't ended up too great, and it kind of put Yuta back in this game where Corey Burkhart looked wildly ahead if he just hard casted it, and now once again this is not a obvious misplay or anything. It is a situational decision, and it just so happened that this situation didn't work out too well for Corey.
Yeah. So 2 options here in hand for Yuta. Can either go for the Opt or the Faithless Looting. Just going to fire a Faithless Looting once again, holding that land to see what we find. Going to discard 2 cards. Ooh, finds a Magma Spray. That's not going to help super much right now, so the lands are going to hit the bin.
And we'll see what Corey can find.
Okay. Brazen Borrower, not too shabby.
Yeah, and we got to remember Yuta made a decision as well to not kill Teferi. So we might look back on that and think like, oh no, this could have been avoided as well. Because I think I can speak from my own personal experience. Every time I've chosen to not kill Teferi, it's worked out poorly for me.
Instant regretty, right?
One. Yeah.
Yeah. I have a little song I sing for Teferi every time I see him. It's how do you solve a problem like Teferi? Sung in the tune of how do you solve a problem like Maria, right? Not Maria Bartholdi. We love Maria Bartholdi. She's not a problem at all. But Teferi is a problem.
Very true. So very true.
The sooner you kill him, the better.
They're both heroes, though. That's the one thing Teferi and Maria have in common.
This is true.
Yeah. All right, that's a good draw. This is probably the Dovin's Veto target. Yeah, Corey, snap that one off. That is a very important card there just because it represents, the possibility of 2 other great spells.
Indeed. Here we're going to see Magma Spray take care of the bigger of the 2 sharks. This Ox of Agonis is going to make its way towards, as well as this Arclight Phoenix here. They're going to make their way towards Teferi to try and take care of it. But unfortunately, Brazen Borrower and Castle Ardenvale are going to jump in the way here of this attack. Or we could just see a jump block, yeah?
Yeah, interesting. There was a nice play, but Corey deciding to be a little more patient of bouncing Ox of Agonis, having that 2/2 to kill Teferi, or to kill Arclight Phoenix, but chooses against it. A very patient play because we do know if Ox goes to the hand, you're just able to recast it, and that does yield a bunch of cards as well.
Mystical Dispute drawn off the top here. Corey is, like you mentioned, just playing the patient game, just getting this 1/1 off of Castle Ardenvale every turn.
Yep, and I also want to remind everyone back at home, this is the match where if Yuta Takahashi wins, he will be locked for the World Championship. If he loses, there's still plenty of other options, but Yuta, like we were saying in the game break earlier, is in control of his own destiny here. So all up to him to win this and lock himself as that 4th slot into the World Championship.
Things aren't looking super great in this first game here, though.
Not great at all.
Teferi's just keeps on ticking everything that Corey costs. It's making him a shark as well. Oof.
Yeah, and just that hard cast shark is not extremely common, but up against these Arclight Phoenix decks, it's absolutely game breaking against them. There's no way to really deal with it. You have like some petty thefts to bounce it. Not the best solution either. You either recast it or you just get a giant shark out of it. So it's looking like it's a very low percent Yuta can win this game, and actually almost conceded there, but is going to fight the good fight.
So both Faithless Lootings look like they're going to be fired off here. But it's kind of just like, digging desperately for answers now.
Yep. And one thing we haven't even seen this game that we're going to definitely need to keep an eye on for our next game. We see all these graveyard activations either from Faithless Looting, Ox came back, Arclight Phoenix came from the graveyard. Rest in Peace is a card that is played in Corey's deck where we haven't seen it in other control decks. You know, there just hasn't been a lot of white control decks. Seth was playing Jeskai Control, had a couple of copies of Rest in Peace, but all these Dimir control decks that the Team CFB has decided to play can't really control the graveyard as well as this Esper control deck can.
Oh, and the lovely sight of Narset is enough to send Yuta Takahashi packing for that game. So now we're going to go to sideboards. Now, does it get easier or more difficult after sideboard for the Izzet Phoenix deck against Esper Control?
I think it gets harder. You know, we've talked about this, Ailey, a lot, where these Izzet Phoenix decks can bring in these, you know, answers like negate, like mystical disputes, but that truly just makes their deck a little bit worse. And these Esper control decks get to really refine their decks and, you know, take out cards that can be okay. You know, I'm kind of looking at Day of Judgment, Wrath of Gods, decent cards that can help. But being able to bring in more disputes, which are excellent, maybe even Kaya to be able to clean up some cards from the graveyard, some more counter spells, and even Cry of the Carnarium to clean up some cards. Like, Corey's got a really good sideboard for these Izzet Phoenix decks, and it makes sense, you know, because since he was very prepared for this obvious popular deck of Izzet Phoenix.
Let's take a quick look at the decisions made here. They are swapped, so no Kaya in the Izzet Phoenix deck. Please do not be alarmed. But like you mentioned, you know, bringing in all of the graveyard hate, bunch more removals, some more hand disruption, and interestingly, taking out one copy of Rest in Peace there for Corey Burkhart. So yeah, this should be a good scrap.
Yeah, that is pretty interesting. Just kind of recognizing, well, that, you know, maybe these Arclight Phoenixes coming back from the graveyard just aren't that big of a deal. And if you ever draw that second Rest in Peace, it feels really bad since they do not really help out each other too much. But yeah, very powerful if you get that first one.
All right, let's get things underway here. Sulfur Falls to kick things off for Yuta Takahashi has a pretty decent hand and a very, very powerful enchantment in that Improbable Alliance.
Yeah, exactly. I think you just slammed this, and I imagine Corey is going to be unpleased at that. Had the Thoughtseize, but that was not a Watery Grave. It was a Drowned Catacomb, so a little rough sequencing there.
Yeah, quite unfortunate, and won't be able to stop the second card draw on Yuta's next turn with his Thoughtseize, as he's going to find a 3/1 mana spells and a Sprite Dragon, which, if he leaves that in hand, can start getting in for a good chunk of damage over the next couple of turns.
Yeah, absolutely. And I love that Yuta is playing Cycling in Standard and then Izzet Phoenix in Historic with Improbable Alliance in both. Isn't that just a probable alliance at this point? Like, they are aligned together. They are helping each other out.
Red and blue together. Bringing back big birds, drawing cards. It's the dream. A Fry in hand now. Very, very nice find there for Yuta. He's going to go Opting. And finds a Sulfur Falls off the top of the library there.
Yeah, and this is another deck that it's not too hard to activate Improbable Alliance on your opponent's turn either. Brainstorm with Improbable Alliance is kind of disgusting.
Gross. Yeah, just a little bit.
Yeah. We'll see if that comes up. But, you know, same with Faithless Looting, Opt, all those trigger on your own turn to trigger Improbable Alliance. So you may not have, you know, that much cycling like we see in the other deck, but you have plenty of ways to put a 1/1 into play every single turn. And this is going to add up against Corey's hand here.
So post-combat, going to fire off this Opt here. Finds an Arclight Phoenix. Happy to draw that. So that's going to hang out in hand until next turn where Faithless Looting can get that into the graveyard. Corey Burkhart's got the Brainstorm into Fetch Land Shuffle. Finds a couple lands. Oh, Rest in Peace.
That's a scary card. And honestly, think about this sequence from Yuta. Yuta just snap went to combat and maybe was just, no matter what, even if he saw Arclight off the Opt, wasn't interested in trying to put it in the graveyard and bring it back. But if we would have Opt first and then cast Faithless Looting, if we have a spell in the top two cards, you know, that isn't a Fry or a removal spell, you could have brought an Arclight Phoenix back, and that window might be over if we cast a Rest in Peace here to do that at all. But looks like Corey's deciding not to play it anyways.
Yeah, I also think for a lot of the times, the players are more than happy just to play Arclight Phoenix hardcast, you know?
Yeah.
Sure, you don't get to do the fun, fancy thing where you chuck it in the bin and then bring it back, but you
do
still
like to
get
be
to
fun
chip
and
in there for a
fancy,
bunch of
though.
damage. Yes, fancy is always fun.
I think we might be trying to get a little fancy here and fire off that second Faithless looting. We'll see what Yuta decides. But it looks like Corey is really prioritizing making a 2/2 shark here. And it looks like Yuta is really prioritizing being patient. And that's really interesting to me.
Okay. All right, so that Arclight Phoenix is, for the most part, I would say doomed.
Yeah.
And we're going to get a 2/2 shark for Corey Burkhart just to get in the way of these pesky little 1/1s. Oof, another land off the top for Corey. That's not great.
Yeah, that's a bit of a flood. I think Corey is happy to make every single land drop here, but doesn't want to get a little carried away. And here it is. It's rest in peace time, and Yuta is probably not going to be too happy about that one.
Nothing you can do about it right now, though. So,
Yep.
Rest in peace. We'll exile the graveyards. Goodbye, all the fun stuff. And now he just has to rely on the creatures on the battlefield and the ones he draws off the top of his library. No more graveyard shenanigans from here on out.
Yeah, we're seeing if we want to fry here. Yuta contemplating a little bit. But yeah, Faithless Looting becomes a lot worse of a card when all it says is just draw 2, discard 2, except you actually lose a card by casting it. So it's not card advantage. So it makes a lot of sense to just say, let's go to Improbable Alliance, and even gets rid of Faithless Looting here, prioritizing even Fabled Passage over it.
Yeah, so the game plan now for Yuta is just to take advantage of the Improbable Alliance draw, get as many cards down, get as many cards out of it as he can, create as many tokens, and Corey's on the same sort of plan there, except his tokens are slightly larger.
Yeah, remember when I said I don't think Corey's ever hardcast a Shark Typhoon in his life? Can we delete that, or we're live, huh? I guess we can't scrape that. Oh, okay. Yeah,
we might have to.
Because he does it often. It's his favorite thing to do. He wakes up in the morning, brushes his teeth, hardcast Shark Typhoon, and then starts his day.
Exactly. We'll just edit that out, and you'll look like a super genius. It's all good.
With that in post, absolutely. Yep.
100%. All right, so looks like Corey wants to leave up all of his options. He's got Baleful Mastery, Fatal Push, Mystical Dispute, all the cards that say, I'm doing nothing on my turn. Your go.
Yeah, and at this point, we have Baleful Mastery. We can even Fatal Push something that's not that appealing, but Baleful Mastery with just Dispute seems pretty solid to me. I don't even think Dispute's going to get that much value, but when Improbable Alliance is only cranking out 1/1, all Corey has to do is cast one spell a turn in his Esper control deck. Usually not that hard to do here, so you got to think advantage Corey Burkhart, and it might mean Yuta has to play another match to see if he will be locking up that world championship spot.
Well, if the cards do fall in his favor, all he has to do is hope that his closest competitor takes the loss. So, you know, either way, he's still got a pretty good shot here, but would love to get in on his own terms with his own victory here, as Cracking Drake is scried to the top with Opt. It's going to be drawn. And this board is just going to keep getting wider with these little 1/1s.
Yep, the only time I see this many 1/1 fairies is when Bitter Blossom is in play, one of Yuta's favorite card that he probably has framed in his house since he's won so many Grand Prix with it back in the day.
Brainstorm here from Corey, sending a couple lands back. Still has a bunch of things that he can do. But one thing he's interested in is a swing in here with this 4/4. So we're going to see everything block here, just to make sure that this does indeed die.
It's a scary way to be dealing with these sharks when a Shark Typhoon is here. It is an uphill battle, to say the least.
Oh, definitely.
And the bad thing about this Brainstorm is we see one Hallowed Fountain. I didn't see what the other card was below, but we don't really have that shuffle effect. So we're probably just going to see some Castle Ardenvale tokens, and as Yuta's battlefield gets bigger and bigger, we might just see a Wrath whenever it's time to clear it out, and then hopefully draw something like Narset to Fairy to get constant flow of these Shark Typhoons coming in.
Yeah. So Brainstorm on Corey's turn, most likely. because it will be the 2 cards drawn that Improbable Alliance requires.
Yep.
And like you mentioned, it's token time.
We'll see if he fires it off right now to avoid, let's say, a second Mystical Dispute or drawing of a Dovin's Veto. But pretty obvious that Corey would have his least exciting cards on top after that Brainstorm and you aren't allowed to shuffle away.
This Brainstorm, though, for Yuta Takahashi is going to be a favorite better. 2 pathways put back on top, another token made, and a shuffle effect to get rid of those lands.
We got that other Watery Grave on top, so we'll see how long, and we've seen Corey be patient in the past, we'll see how long he can be patient against this battlefield that's amassing that's quite larger than his, and he may be cranking out 1/1 Castle Ardenvale tokens. They don't really do anything against this Crackling Drake, so we got a couple of chump blocks, but this Wrath is going to happen eventually, and bad news bears for Corey B is we got a negate here in Yuta's hand.
Yeah. That's a great find for Yuta, just to be able to protect this battlefield. And a Mystical Dispute for Corey's Mystical Dispute. So things are looking pretty good here for Yuta Takahashi. But don't forget that every single spell that Corey casts is just going to make another creature on the board for him.
Exactly. And look at Yuta, kind of did his math here, like counted over his lands. What that tells me is he's trying to think about, can I afford to actually activate Improbable Alliance? Or do I want to be patient and make sure I have mana to counter spells? Decides so far to just cast the Brainstorm and not activate Improbable Alliance. I really like that, just because so you can counter Wrath through a dispute if need be.
Expressive Iteration. I'm going to take a look at the top 3 cards of the library. One of them is going to go to hand, 1 goes into the library, and 1 goes into exile, able to be played this turn. So that will be the land drop, as the turn is going to get passed back to Corey, who is going to fatally push this Crackling Drake away as Revolt was triggered with the 1/1 Shark dying.
Yeah, Yuta's got to decide now, is this bait? Or is this something I should actually care about? And it kind of feels like bait to me if I was sitting in Yuta's seat, like Yuta's board is already a lot bigger, but it is the biggest creature on the battlefield. So fighting around it, definitely reasonable, but a definite option. As you can see, Yuta tilt his head a little bit there, a little unsure.
All right. So that's a win there for Corey in terms of, cool, I get to resolve a board wipe now.
Yeah, I have perfect information being able to see, and I don't even know if he wants to counter that. Like it's a little tricky. This should scream out a Wrath effect here from Yuta's side.
Something fishy this way comes.
Yeah, I suppose you'd want to attack with those no matter what.
Oh, okay, no Wrath yet. All right, still happy just to be on chump block duty for this 10-4.
Yeah, Corey really wants to have a play where he goes something like Wrath of God and then has a follow-up so that all of a sudden going into Yuta's turn, Corey has a better battlefield and the Shark Typhoon on the battlefield. But first, he's got to stop drawing these lands, start drawing some spells.
Yeah. Out comes the Arclight Phoenix, potentially for Yuta. Gonna think about that a little bit longer, though.
Yeah, the exclamation point hardcast is a lot different from the Izzet Phoenix deck, but this is it. Hardcast that Phoenix. It's what we came here for.
Arclight Phoenix on the stack. Mystical Dispute wants nothing to do with that. We'll be quite happy to add that to the Wrath of God kill count, as it were.
Yeah, Yuta's hand is quite good right now. These Brazen Borrowers, even in the face of a Wrath, is pretty strong. Just to have that 3/1 that you can play at end step. They of course trade with a lot of sharks, but it really could be very important later on in this game.
Yeah, in for 5 points of damage, so down to 8 goes Corey Burkhart, in for 3 with these tokens. And you gotta believe that it's Wrath of God time, right?
Yeah, otherwise you're just dead. So it's got to happen. That Crackling Drake, And Corey's deck has not been really agreeing with him. Even like a brainstorm there to even make one more flying blocker would have been something. But at this point, you just have to Wrath.
Yeah. It's not the end of the world, though, as you mentioned, for Yuta. He does have the 2 Brazen Borrowers in hand that will be able to flash in on the end step. But looks like... Okay, interesting.
Yeah, that's pretty smart. Pretty smart here, because now if that Shark Typhoon gets re-hard cast, Yuta has the Mystical Dispute. I do not think Corey's going to fall for this. But we will see. It might be a cycle.
Oh, I love me a good counter war. Brazen Borrower on the stack, Mystical Dispute in response, and has the mana available to pay for Yuta Takahashi's Mystical Dispute. But here comes an Arclight Phoenix. It knows about the Shark Typhoon, so...
Oh, this is going to be awesome.
Oh, no, wait, we have Fry, so the bird can go for it.
Yeah, or just Brazen Borrower here. Like this is just, you know, Yuta looking at Corey and be like, I dare you to make a 4/4 with that Shark Typhoon, because then no longer does Yuta have to deal with the hardcast Shark Typhoon. Yeah. And now he just has the only creature and petty thefts in the Adventure Zone. What a masterfully played game by Yuta.
Oh my goodness, just finding a way around that pesky enchantment and leaving Corey with essentially nothing. That's a Glacial Fortress in hand, so he's going to have to draw really well.
There it is.
Does with Teferi, Hero of Dominaria off the top of the library.
Yeah, and we'll see what he even does with that Brazen Borrower being face up. Normally, you'd be like, all right, just tuck that Arclight Phoenix away, but at this point, I think Corey needs better.
Yeah, Fatal Push. He's going to need something to leave the battlefield. Oh boy.
Wow, I cannot believe Yuta's ahead in this game. This was just such masterfully played.
Expertly.
It has honestly been an absolute treat to watch Yuta play this Izzet Phoenix deck this weekend. It's been incredible, and that's it. 6 damage. Fatal Push doesn't hit it.
Fatal Push can't do it.
Wow.
Teferi could have sent away the Phoenix there, maybe bought him a turn, but just expertly played by Yuta Takahashi, who has now tied this up at 1 game apiece. We're going to take a very short break, and when we come back, we will see the deciding game here between these 2 players. Welcome back to the Strixhaven League weekend, everybody. Ailey Loney alongside Corey Baumeister. Okay. And we have seen one heck of a game here so far between Corey Burkhart and Yuta Takahashi, who's looking for his final win to lock up his World Championship spot. Corey, that game was bananas.
That game was unbelievable. And I got to say, Yuta Takahashi is really good at beating Corey Bees. Maybe I don't know about Corey Burkhart, but I am now 0-5 against him at Pro Tours. He actually beat me in my last round of my first Pro Tour when I was a 16-year-old kid and had to have Brad accompany me to this Pro Tour and, you know, sign a waiver so I could play. He is just, I just can't beat him. I just can't beat him. He's too good.
All right, well, let's see if Yuta Takahashi can continue the winning ways against the Corey Bees of the world as we take a look at the opening hands here. Pretty good hands on both sides. A couple of brainstorms, an opt, and the famed ox. We'll call it that.
The famed ox. Yeah, absolutely. Great hand. All these brainstorms, they could be anything. They could even be more brainstorms, you know? So pretty valuable hand.
Could even be a hat.
Yeah. And
So,
one big glaring problem from Corey's hand so far is the lack of lands and the lack of swamps.
Yep.
But with Brainstorm over there as well, as long as he doesn't run into the nightmare scenario of 3 non-lands on top, he should be okay.
Yeah, it's okay. Once he finds that swamp, he'll be able to answer a lot of what Yuta's doing here. Yuta, though, with the 1-2 punch of Brainstorm into Faithless Looting, will be able to get some stuff into the graveyard and hopefully not have to deal with a Rest in Peace this game.
Yeah, and this is one to contemplate because Corey kind of has two options here. It's either let Yuta do his things right now, or Dovin's veto this, and then at the start of next turn, Brainstorm and hope to hit lands. It gives you one card deeper, which is valuable because the train wreck situation, finding 3 non-lands on top, you're really stuck in it for a while. Brainstorm locked, if you will. But wow. Oh, wow. That was just
it hurts.
Oh, my.
Oh, it hurts so much. So Watery Grave, the perfect find off the top. That's the black mana to unlock Inquisition of Kozilek and the Thoughtseize. Follow that up with a Rest in Peace or keep up the veto. There's just, oh my goodness me. Perfect draws there from Corey.
It really was. And we'll see. I mean, this is the point where, especially when Corey looks at this hand, we have 3 spells that could bring back Arclight Phoenix. We have that Mountain, which makes it a little tougher. You'd have to actually find Faithless Looting or something like that. But nothing in that hand screams, I must counter it right now. So this seems like a time to jam Rest in Peace and get that out of the way.
Rest in pepperonis, dear Phoenix. Away they go. There goes the Ox. There goes Faithless Looting. And now Yuta is forced to play a similar game to what he did in the second one, where everything is just hard cast from hand.
Yeah.
Very nice find.
Yuta did plenty fine with doing that style of game last time, even though it seems like it should be a lot rougher. Like your ridiculous draws of bringing back 3 Arclight Phoenixes and attacking, that dream is dead. But you still are just an efficient Izzet deck that can play threats and then back them up with counter spells, and that is still very effective against a control deck.
Yeah, typically you expect the Esper control deck to just run right over the Izzet Phoenix because of all the hand disruption, all of the counter spells, all of the ways to deal with the graveyard and to prevent drawing with the Narsets. But, I mean, Yuta, he looks like he's prepared for this matchup. He knows exactly how to navigate around it.
Yeah, no kidding. Just an expert at this style of deck. And a pretty nice heads-up play there. Normally you'd think, I just want to jam Brainstorm and hide the cards that I don't want Corey to take with that Thoughtseize. But the absolute train wreck situation is if Corey had a dispute, that would be the worst. But Dovin's veto is a close second where Corey could have just taken both of those draw spells. And now all of a sudden, Yuta can pick his spots where he brainstorms to shuffle away some of these unneeded cards.
Yeah. So land miss there for Corey. Just has to pass the turn back. It's going to going to cycle a Shark Typhoon. Gets a 1/1 on the battlefield and hopefully finds land number 4. Doesn't. Finds Dovin's veto and a Watery Grave off the top there for land number 4. So
good old baby shark here joining the side of Corey's side.
Gonna chip in there for 1 point of damage because why not?
Yuta being extremely patient here.
There's a Dovin's veto on the Expressive Iteration. No big surprise there from the Esper control deck.
And Yuta just worrying about making land drops. Usually you want to, or usually we've seen Yuta just kind of hit 5 lands, kind of stop there and shuffle away all these extra lands, either with Brainstorm or discard them with Faithless Looting. But just recognizing this game's going to go long. I want to make sure I keep pace and lands with Corey, and that should help out, especially with 3 counter spells in hand.
Yeah, as much as you want to be the aggressive, tempo-oriented deck, you also need to keep up the lands. Because if you do get into a counter war, whoever has the most lands and the most counters is going to win it. So that's why you see Yuta just valuing getting his land drops, holding on to all these counter spells, and then picking the fights when he knows he'll be able to win.
Yep, absolutely. We see defending the Sprite Dragon right now, since it is our only threat. You just really got to hope that something sticks. Now, Corey has the ability to cast Baleful Mastery for its reduced cost if need be, or try to cast something else. But these mystical disputes are face up, so it'll just be a decision. Does Corey want to run into that possibility?
Now, with the disputes, he won't be able to counter the Fatal Push itself.
Correct.
You would need one extra land there. So if Dovin's Veto were to make its way into the equation here, this would be a fight that Corey wins. But holding on to the mystical disputes for the impending Teferis, not a bad idea.
Yep, and not bad here. This Fatal Push is getting negated, but finding that other Fatal Push, Corey has perfect information, knows this Fatal Push is going to resolve. And that's good news here for Corey, because it kind of felt like you got that negate out of there, and it didn't do enough since it was a redundant Fatal Push. So that was a good exchange for Corey.
For sure. Again, Yuta, slight consideration there to fire off the Brainstorm on the end step. But it's going to do it in his main phase, and Dovin's Veto is going to say, no, thank you very much. You dug through enough cards in your library. Counter this. Oh, wait, you can't.
Just snapped it off, too. Like, had the option to make a 3/3 shark there instead and let the draw spell go, and just recognizes, no, I cannot let you manipulate your hand so cleanly with having a Fabled Passage in play. It's just not worth it. But that was a big draw.
Hey, buddy.
Yeah,
okay, Ox of Agonis in hand. Very, very nice indeed. Here comes a big old shark. Nothing that Yuta can do about it. So a 3/3 joins the 1/1 on the battlefield. And a Thoughtseize. Oh, that's gross.
Yeah, that Thoughtseize could easily get this double dispute if it were to be fired off. And right now, the ball is in Yuta's court. He is the one that is pressured to make something happen. Because if he just sits around, this is a 3-turn clock, and these sharks are going to clean it up pretty quickly. And now, bad news bears for Yuta is you got to get rid of your 2 answers to the Teferi we know about, but really nothing you can do. You got to do something.
Yeah, and very luckily finding a Fry, which will most likely get Thoughtseized away. But let's see how Corey plays this next turn. We know first thing he's got to do is deal with this Ox. So here comes the Baleful Mastery. That'll take care of the 4/2. But for the most part, the 4/2 did its job.
Got exiled twice, thanks to Rest in Peace and the Baleful Mastery. No big deal.
And Corey now putting foot. He's got 6 points of damage to do here. Thoughtseize is going to clear the way for Teferi. This Fry is going to happen in response, potentially. Or is he going to fire it off to kill this 3/3?
Corey's got to look at that hand and be pretty happy about it. Teferi being able to be played and draw a card where you don't really have any threat of losing your Teferi unless Yuta gets a little lucky and draws another Fry. Oh, even decides
for the bird, yeah.
Just get rid of the creature. And now we'll see if Teferi even gets cast.
So the Crackling Drake would obviously be a little bit more problematic, being a blocker for these sharks as well as drawing a card here for Yuta. So
yeah, it wouldn't be truly the biggest problem because Teferi could tuck it the next turn. But the train wreck situation is Crackling Drake draws an answer for Teferi. And then all of a sudden, Corey is looking back, be like, how did I get here when I could have just got rid of it? You know, so this is a safer place. And now it forces the Fry on the Teferi, which isn't the thing that's killing Yuta right now. So we got to find an answer to these sharks, and we got to do it relatively soon.
Yeah. The sooner the better. I mean, there's mana left up from Corey. Only 1 card in hand, though. So I think Yuta's going to have to go digging now to try and find some answers.
Crackling Drake, please, is what Yuta is thinking.
Easy peasy one time. Oh, Brazen Borrower. That's a very nice find there.
Just snapped it off, and this is going to be a nice upkeep petty theft to keep Yuta in the game. You know, this is definitely not even putting advantage back into Yuta's court. This is just to stay in the game of Magic.
Yep, and very intelligently doing it in the upkeep to ensure that there's no chance, or at least a less chance, of a counterspell working its way into the equation there.
Oh, my.
Oh, very nice.
You know, Corey's just like, not like this. You know,
not like this. Lands aplenty on the top of your screen, and on the bottom, we're just seeing the pigeons Flying free, 2-turn clock here now. So we're going to see the 1-1 trade with the Brazen Borrower. In for 3 goes the Arclight Phoenix. Corey's going to have to draw something here.
Oh, that's a big something.
That's a something.
And Yuta's like, oh, come on, just some more lands. Didn't want to see that.
Oh,
not bad.
Okay, all right, it's fine. Narset is actually very, very good for him. Those 2 lands, they can push off and go back to the top of the library and get shuffled away by Fabled Passage. That's totally fine. What Narset is going to do, though, is hopefully, if it doesn't whiff, is find an answer for this Arclight Phoenix.
Yeah, now Corey's just debating, do I want to clear the top with Fabled Passage to give myself a higher probability of hitting? And I think you have to at this stage of the game.
Yeah.
Even if you're kind of missing out on a little bit of future value if you draw another Brainstorm, we're at the stage of the game where you just have to make sure you can follow this up with maybe a Teferi. That would be excellent. Or really just anything. Does that submit 0?
What do we see?
All the suspense.
I think it's a Teferi and a Wrath of God on top of the library. I'm just taking a wild guess with my super duper caster vision.
Man, you're good. Let's see if
Thank
you're
you.
right. Whoa!
2 points for me. I win.
No
So it's going to be Teferi, Hero of Dominaria. He's going to hit the battlefield and deal with this pigeon, or are we going to draw a card? Let's see. Yep, -3 on the bird. Bye-bye. So shield's down now. What can Yuta find?
Look at the start of this turn. Corey's flipping around, crossing his fingers, but that turn started with nothing on the battlefield for Corey Burkhart, and 1 Brainstorm, just showing the absolute power of these Mystical Archive cards, has turned that into a Narset and a Teferi on the battlefield. Like, what do you do here if you're Yuta? He's played so tight, but just these Planeswalkers have proven to just be a little bit too much.
Yeah, and now he's got a tough decision here. The Arclight Phoenix is 3rd from the top, but Fabled Passage can shake it up and hopefully get him something good off the top of the library. Let's see what it is. Okay, all right. That's not too shabby.
It's activated, but Narset's on the battlefield,
yeah,
so we don't
do it on Corey's turn. That's okay. You'll be able to at least find another card.
It's just draws and discards. You don't get...
oh, yeah, you're right. You're right.
It doesn't actually get a 1/1 here, so that really does nothing in the face of Narset.
Narset, you're a pain in the... Yep. In the nicest way possible. You're a pain.
Exactly. That little red circle that goes around it has gotten every single one of us.
You messed up. Exactly. Is how I imagine she sits there laughing at you. Anyway. Disdain for blue planeswalkers aside, this game is continuing on. There are 2 lands in hand. Narset is taking another look, finds a Shark Typhoon off the top, as well as a replacement Narset and a Brainstorm. What do you like here, Corey?
I think I just like another Shark, maybe even a hard cast here when you're this far ahead. You know there's nothing to worry about. And
yeah,
you may have a disdain for blue planeswalker, but that house or apartment that Corey's in right now was probably paid for by blue planeswalkers, to be honest.
Oh, man. Are we going to see a hard cost Shark Typhoon? No, says Corey Burkhart. I'm just going to make a massive flyer here.
Just an 8/8, and that should do it. Looks like Yuta is going to have to hope something goes wrong for the 2 people that are hot on his heels, or, of course, win this last round to lock up the World Championship.
Yep, and we're going to see a cycle here on the end step, an upkeep stop set for Yuta to try and draw an answer to this massive shark that's coming.
Yeah,
but you got to think it's looking very good here for Corey Burkhart. Max value Shark Typhoon. Here we go. That's an 8/8. A land drawn off the top here.
It's got to be
Brazen Borrower or bust. What is it? Oh, no. It's an Arclight Phoenix, and that's going to be the GG from Yuta. A well-fought battle, but Corey Burkhart is going to pick up the victory there in a very exciting series between these 2 players. What a matchup, Corey.
That match was unbelievable. There were so many lead changes where you thought this game was Yuta's, and then I can't believe, Corey lost game 2, and it was just unbelievable back and forth, and just showed the poise of both players. And Yuta's got a little bit more of a sweat to check how the other players are doing or win that last match.
Yeah, so he still is in a very good position to lock up that final spot. But we still have plenty more Magic to go for this weekend. It's getting to an end almost. So we'll have those final answers for you very shortly. I bet a lot of these players are like, please just let it end. I can't handle the stress anymore.
Yeah, no kidding, no kidding.
We're going to take a very short break, but when we come back, we'll have many, many more Magic matches for you, my friends. So don't go anywhere. Welcome back to the MTG League Weekend. It is the last one. I am Ailey Loney. This is Corey Baumeister. And we are finding out where all of our pro players are landing in the various leagues, in the various gauntlets, all that good stuff. But we still have a couple more matches before we lock them all in. So let's go and check out Shota Yasuoka versus Ken Yukihiro. It's going to be Izzet Phoenix versus Company. So I'm excited to see these two decks in action. We've seen Izzet Phoenix featured prominently this weekend. Can Shota Yasuoka have similar results? This one is a slightly different variant, though. It's a Grixis variant.
Interesting. Yeah, I was like, did we mash up some of the Dimir control with this Izzet Phoenix? And it looks like we did. Looking like about the same build of Izzet Phoenix that we saw from Yuta, just adding 2 Duress, 1 Thoughtseize, and just changing the mana base a little bit to facilitate those. I'm sure we got some sideboard cards as well, but otherwise pretty standard Izzet Phoenix.
All right, let's take a look then at Ken Yukihiro's list. Ken always brings something spicy for us. Is rocking Selesnya Company. Slightly different build, though, to the other players that we've seen. A couple of Luminarch Aspirants in there. We got Elite Spellbinders that we can hit, so not all in on the Angels package.
Yeah, and we definitely have a little bit of spice with, I was even looking for the name of this card because it is, something we saw in limited packs that even went pretty late. And that is Skyclave Cleric. Ken had to throw in some curveball here. Couldn't just be a standard green-white company. That's not how Ken rolls. So really cool stuff, and I'm excited to see this.
All right, so for stakes in terms of this matchup, Shota Yasuoka is looking for a win to guarantee his spot in the Rivals Gauntlet. So let's jump in to game number 3 here between these two players and see how this one shakes out.
Yep, and it does look at the same time that Ken Yukihiro is locked for that same gauntlet, so it's really on Shota here to be able to take this down and get himself into position where he at least gets to play for his fate.
All right, so kicking things off here, Temple Garden down for Ken Yukihiro to kick things off. Both players are sitting at 1 game apiece, so don't let that bar Fool you, my friends. We're going to get Bishop of Wings down on the battlefield whenever an angel enters. Going to gain some life, and when an angel dies, it makes a 1/1.
Yeah, it's about time we got in on some of this collected company fun that Marshall and Cedric have been all about.
They always get the collected company matches, and then they always give it a hard time.
Well, I can't guarantee we aren't going to give it a hard time if we see some more whiffs.
True.
It hasn't looked good so far, but I am happy to be proven wrong. And let's see some good collected company hits.
Yeah,
what do you say?
We just have to draw it here for Ken Yukihira. There's another bishop. And on the other side of things, we've got a Magma Spray, a bunch of lands for Shota. He's not going to be too happy about that. And an Arclight Phoenix hanging out in hand.
Yeah, a lot of lands there. That hand is begging for a Faithless Looting or a Brainstorm here. But as it stands, yeah, a pretty weak hand. And that Magma Spray is not looking great. We'll see if that Scavenging Ooze comes down to open the target. But you know that's what Ken's looking at right now. Be like, do I even risk playing this? Or do I wait till creatures die to then make it a little bit better? And with Ken having as many lands as he does, I wouldn't be too shocked if we see Ken hold on to this.
Yeah, that Scavenging Ooze can cause a lot of problems for the Grixis Phoenix deck. I guess we can call it that. As Magma Spray is going to take care of this Bishop of Wings. The counter goes on the itty bitty Sprite Dragon and is able to kill that creature. But unfortunately for Shota, there is a follow-up creature to replace the one that died.
Yep, absolutely.
Oh, there you go.
That's a big pickup.
Yeah, that's a really good draw there. Expressive Iteration will be able to help Shota out of this tricky predicament he's found himself in, all the while making that itty-bitty Sprite Dragon that much larger.
And we do got to remember, this is an Archon of Emeria here on the table, and that only allows one spell to be played, so it'd be very shocking to see anything other than a land in the Exile Zone. Otherwise, you just can't cast it. So Archon, excuse me, of Emeria, a phenomenal card against Izzet Phoenix. There's no returning Phoenix when that card is on the battlefield.
No, not at all. Kind of just shuts down these decks that like to do multiple things per turn. Yeah. Unfortunately, can't get through here, and they still have to deal with this big 4/4 now that's on the battlefield. So I'd like to find a couple of answers for that.
And we see a nice sideboard card that is offered in the Grixis Phoenix that isn't in the regular Izzet one. A nice Fatal Push being drawn. We've been seeing how great that card was for Corey Burkhart. Now Shota said, you know what? I'm going to add that card to my list as well.
That is one way to deal with the Archon if he's able to get something to leave the battlefield this turn. Unfortunately, he doesn't have a way to do that right now and is still flush with lands, as we see 5 in hand there for him.
Yeah, this would be one of those normal turns where if Shouta could see Ken's hand, it would just be like, all right, let's jam this Arclight Phoenix, turn both these creatures sideways. But if I've ever seen a green-white company deck pass on turn 5, it's, it's always like, oh, what on earth could they have? Oh, that's unfortunate. They didn't have a single play. Like, they probably have collected company, but we just went for it anyways.
Okay, here's a nifty little card to find. Unfortunately, it's probably going to get very dead very quickly before it's able to put a counter on. But that would have been a very nice way to try and keep up with this ever-growing Izzet Phoenix. Excuse me, the Sprite Dragon.
Yeah, and it's looking great here for Shota. That is not drawing anything for Ken here is really frustrating.
Yeah, that is a big pigeon.
Yeah, when that card goes unchecked, it really is extremely dangerous.
I mean, what does Ken even have to deal with that? I'm just checking through his list now.
Skyclave Apparition is the big one.
Yeah, no Gloss Caskets, it seems.
Yeah, no, we see some Deccan Stones in the sideboard. Who knows if Ken actually brought those in. But, yeah, what we need here is a collected company, and we need it to actually hit some stuff.
Oh, no. Oh, you can just see the disappointment on Ken Yukihira's face. Finding a land, that's not going to help him. This little Scavenging Ooze can do its best and gain some life out of the creatures that have died. But it's looking like Shota Yasuoka is going to pick up the victory here.
Yeah, it really is. And only one creature here And yeah, sure, you can activate it to get it out of Magma Spray range, but now you have a 1 blocker. If there's any spell, it's game.
Yeah.
Which we see there isn't, so that this is technically still live, but there's only 1 block you can do here, and that
it's
is
a bad block.
Archon to a 5/5, and then the old Crackling Drake gets to come down. And at this point, it's really doesn't look like there's coming back. Even Collected Company into double Skyclave just isn't enough.
Yeah. So
Kind of anticlimactic game here we joined in on, but that's Magic.
Gosh darn it! I was hoping for a good Collected Company.
Me too.
Alas. So Scavenging Ooze can try and mitigate some of the damage here. Oh, there's a Lava Axe, though. That'll take care of this 4/4.
Yep.
Num, 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 num.
These Collected Company decks have just been cursed all day. I think it was right away yesterday, the first match of Historic, we said on coverage, like, all right, the only deck to win every single one of its matchup were these Collected Company decks. And since then, we haven't seen it have as much luck.
Unfortunately, Selfless Glyphweaver can't cast the other side of things where, he could blow up the entire battlefield, but that's not what it's in the deck for. And Shota Yasaoka is going to pick